thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited to be in Berlin. So he introduced me as an occasional rock climber and hiker. That is one of the ways I try to recharge my brain, especially after a busy week of meetings, dealing with teenagers, if you know how that is. And I find my zen by either going hiking or climbing every Saturday. I've set up Saturday as my me time, so that's my recharge time. And this is a trail that is very close to me. I have sort of a love-hate relationship with this mountain. This hike is super unforgiving trail. It goes up and up and up for almost like 3 kilometers. The good thing is it has some milestones. So after having done the hike so many times, when I see markers like A8, I'm like, okay, I just need to put in a little bit more effort and I can get to the top. So these milestones sort of help me. And here is like other beautiful California trails. Some of them I've hiked, some of them I've given up halfway, and some of them maybe sometime in my life. One thing that these trails share in common is that besides the fact that they're all difficult, is they're all starting in high altitude. And the landscape is different. For example, the Mount Baldy Trail is called the Devil's Backbone, because there's a certain section of the trail which is super narrow and you're in high altitude, and hopefully you have your hiking poles. And then, of course, Mount Whitney, it requires, you can't just want to hike Mount Whitney, you have to get into a lottery system and first get picked for the lottery. And out of the 30,000 people that try to go up to the top of Mount Whitney, maybe just a third of them make it to the top. So these trails have all these challenges, and here I am talking about how difficult these trails are. But can you imagine like the amount of work that went in to actually designing and building this trail when there was nothing existed in just the mountain? So how many of you here are in the process of modernizing your systems? Raise your hands. Yes, you are going to be those trailblazers who are going to find the pathway of trying to move that needle across for your organizations, and it is a really tough, hard journey. So just like these different trails, every app modernization project is different. It has some shared traits and a lot of different constraints. And the constraints in the landscape can be very different based on what you're trying to modernize. For example, are you trying to modernize Unisys or based mainframe or IBM-based mainframe system? That is a modernization. Or maybe it's an application system that's been there for 7 years. That's also difficult and challenging, but the constraints are different. And so when some of the other constraints are, do you still have people in the company that know the old code? And in case of like the mainframe types of systems, there are people who are retired, and some of these are written in COBOL. And so you have completely different sets of challenges. So today I'm going to share 3 things that has helped me on my modernization journey. I'm Indu Alagarsamy. I'm currently working as a principal engineer at the New York Times. At the Times, our mission is simple: to seek the truth and help people see the world. And to do this, we produce award-winning journalism and a spectrum of digital products to help people live informed and fulfilling lives. And all of this helps our readers understand the complexity that is the human experience in, from getting recipes, or breaking news alerts. So one of the many systems that intersect all of these experiences is the commerce system. And that's kind of like what I'm working on. And the space of commerce is massive. So the systems in this space are in charge of managing all of the subscriptions, digital subscriptions, home delivery. There are people still getting the newspapers, and we have to deliver it to them. And all of the money, the billing, the payments, the bookkeeping, all of that stuff falls under commerce. And so to enable all of these capabilities, we have a mix of systems. Some of them are new, some of them are old, some of them are really, really, really old. So, but our users, they don't care if we are writing microservices or how many systems you have, whether these microservices should be running on containers or whether you should be using serverless. For them, it is like, hey, I haven't received the paper, what's going on? Or why isn't Wardle working? Like that, those are the constraints of the users, right? The needs of the user. So it is like our responsibility as like software leaders to ensure that this user experience is important while we track this and how our systems are being bridged. And that is totally on us to make sure we don't break that experience for our users. So we are on a modernization journey as well. And our main goal with our modernization is to reduce the complexity in our subscription systems and make lives easier both for our subscribers as well as our internal and external stakeholders. There are other teams in the organization that rely on our APIs, so we have to serve like our internal users as well. So by modernizing, we hope that we can reduce some of that complexity and make their experience better. But where do we even start? Like, of course, you have patterns like the strangler fig, but like all patterns depend on the context in which you're operating. So does this pattern work for the application modernization challenge you are using? So in our case, we're working with a decades-old system. That is decades with an S. So there's that. And this system supports both the home delivery subscribers that are getting their newspapers like to them, as well as our corporate companies. Like they may be companies that say, hey, I want you to give all of my employees subscription to the Times. So we have customers like that as well. And so this system serves both those users. So we are in the process of trying to modernize that. So the first thing we need to understand is the strategy of the business. And this is where Wardley Mapping comes in really handy. Wardley Mapping is a framework that was created by Simon Wardley, and he has taken his decades of experience, collective learnings, and he's made it available as a free book, free for all. And Ben Mosier's website, learnwardleymapping.com, is really a wealth of information on Wardley Mapping. I first learned Wardley Mapping from Suzanne Kaiser several years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and I found this to be extremely, extremely useful. And the basic premise is like everything evolves or it dies, right? The thing is when we built our systems back in the day, it was the state-of-the-art system. There was nothing like that existed back in the day. We had to figure it out. We had to build it all. There were no SaaS things on the market. So we had to figure it out and solve for this. And legacy is not really a bad word. It's bringing in a lot of money to the company. So the question is that like we're not trying to modernize because these systems are getting old. We are trying to modernize because we have to keep up with the evolution of the industry. So at one point, right, we were completely, fully a print medium. We were printing papers and delivering to the users. And at some point, that changed with the smartphones became smarter. I guess the iPhones came out, what, in 2006, 2007? That changed the world. That changed the way how people started using their phones, and how people started to experience journalism also changed. And so that is a big deal for us because we had to adapt. And so our systems needed to adapt. And so if we can't make that change to the old system, we had to build things fast and quickly. And if that meant writing something new, then that's what we did. And that's how we end up with a list of different systems, sometimes with capabilities that have been duplicated. And we're in this complex system. And sometimes when in this complex cycle, some of it bleeds to the users and the users feel like the pain. Like Chris Richardson, I think, had a tweet like, "I am trying to switch from home delivery to like the digital version. Like, why can't you guys make it easier?" And so the thing is, like, because of our systems, and sometimes things fall between the gap, and that's where it bleeds into the users, and so that's a problem. So one of the things like domain-driven design, it's a design software design principle, teaches us is we have to evolve our software along with the business. So if you're implementing a feature today and you just built all your schema and contracts and everything, and then you go back to the business and you just uncovered some complexity, which has an impact on all the work you just did. Guess what? You have to model that complexity, and it's okay. You have to go and change all of your models, because ultimately, we are writing software. Our goal is to write software that aligns with the business needs. So if we are in this cycle of, yes, we uncovered some complexity, and that means that we have to go change these parts like this, then we wouldn't need like a 5-year app modernization plans, because we're constantly evolving with the business needs. So, and our systems will always remain relevant to our user needs. So when we broke down like our system with Wardley Mapping, this is kind of what we did. So with the Wardley Mapping, first you find who your most important users are that the system that you're building is serving, and what user needs they have. For example, here's a subscriber, and among different needs, one of the fundamental needs is like, I need the paper delivered to my house. So that's like a user need. So we then build like the value chain. We look and see, okay, what do we have in our ecosystem as capability that helps fulfill this need for this user? And so in this case, it's delivery fulfillment. And then you can go, okay, what are all the components and the services and the APIs that fall under this? And you can build this value chain. So you go down the chain. Like, it depends on this service, and this service depends on this, and this depends on this database. So you could go to whatever level of depth you want to go to, and you build this value chain. So users, user needs, and then the value chain. I think this is like the most, like the easier part of Wardley Mapping, where you just go down this path. The next part, which I think is where like Wardley Mapping adds value, is you then take this capability across this landscape of where you are in the market. Is this an idea like that is not there in the market at all? Are you the trailblazers that is like trying this new? You don't know if it would succeed. So it is an untested experimental idea. If that's the case, then it falls under the genesis part of the evolution cycle. Or if this is something, it's a secret sauce for your company, you have a different way of like how you compute certain things to give a financial advantage over your competitors, and that might be on the custom side of the evolution cycle. Or sometimes, right, this feature might be kind of common, where you look in the market and you see there are SaaS offerings that give you the same capability. Maybe there are third-party companies that have this capability. Or it is so common that you could practically rent it, like your cloud services from AWS or GCP or Azure. So the question is, like, when you take the capability, you figure out, is this in the genesis or in the custom stage? If it falls there, then you're better off building, as you're modernizing, you're better off building that capability by yourself. But if it is something that falls under like product or commodity, like, it's better not to build. It's better to save your time and figure out like what else is there on the market. And this is where Suzanne's talk goes into when she was showing how you can use Wardley Mapping even for microservices. When you pull things apart, like you don't need to write your own code to implement a message bus. There are things on the market that do that for you. So you really can, like, especially in a modernization project where your resources are limited, you really want to know like where you want to write your own code versus where you're better off like with a third-party system. So this is the challenging part. So when we did our Wardley mapping, when we did this evolution cycle, what we did was we had a group, and all of us would put in the number, like 1, 2, 3, or 4, stages 1, 2, 3, or 4, at the same time. So then the fun begins, because not all of us are aligned. Some of us think it's custom. Some of us think it's a product. And so that's where like the good discussions begin, and we can align like, okay, this is what I think, this is what you think, what does the business think where we should be? So I think it helps bring that as a business strategy to all of engineers as well, so we can all be aligned, because modernization is sometimes a long project, and we have to be aligned to meet our goals. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is service blueprints. So we've done Wardley mapping now. We've figured out who are our most important users and what are their user needs. Now, do we know what services and APIs and components work together to fulfill this user need in the current state? And that's where like this service blueprint can be helpful. So when I started, like we would, well, there may be some documentation for APIs or components from several teams, but no one knows like how this whole thing is flowing and how are these components from all these different teams are interacting together to fulfill this need. So we have sequence diagrams in the techie architecture side of the world, which give that really nice picture. Here's what happens, this calls this API, here's the call, here's the result. We have that. But what's missing in the sequence diagram is where that fits in the user journey. Now, on the other side, on the business side of things, we have customer journey maps. But the customer journey maps has the customer journey, but we don't know what components and services are needed. So there's this gap on both sides of the world. And when I shared this method with Chris Richardson, he found this to be a really useful way, and he added to his toolbox, and he also blogged about it. I really love his definition, or what he said. It's a diagram that shows the interactions between the users and the architectural elements. So I thought that was really powerful. It's a visual way of seeing like how this most important user need, the whole reason why we have this software, how is it being fulfilled? So, but before we got to service blueprints, this was like, the old way, or the original way, I should say. We had a lot of meetings, and we talked about things. And sometimes some of those discussions would get into deeper discussions, and then we end up talking about something so deep, and then we have to pull ourselves out. Oh, wait, the meeting ended. And then you go back doing your other million tasks, and then you reconvene. So it wasn't going anywhere, and it was taking a lot of time. And my design partner in the design research team, she suggested service blueprints. But before she suggested that, I also tried big picture event storming. I don't know how many of you have tried that. I was thinking, like, from the domain-driven design world, I had learned about event storming. I was like, yes, big picture event storming. Now I go in, and then I tell my business people to imagine the entire thing in commands and events, and I had glazed eyes, and needless to say, that didn't go very well. Everything has a place, but like we can't just apply this one method for every single problem, because that's the only method we know. And so when I learned about service blueprints, I was like, yes, Olivia, let's definitely try it. So this is how we built our service blueprint. Service blueprint is coming from the design world. Like back in the day when people were designing services, like you are trying to go get a passport or a driver's license, what are the steps? And somebody's like imagining all the steps and flows. And so it comes from that realm, but we can borrow that to suit like our needs in software design. So the way we started it is we picked one user and one need. And so we're trying to map that journey. So this journey is a home delivery, like a user who wants to get the paper delivered to their house. So the first thing we do is we map out the user actions. And like, what is this user doing step by step? So in this case, they go, they see a landing page, they click subscribe, and so we show what the offers available to them are, and then they go step by step, and then give their credit card number and click purchase. And so the front stage shows like, as the user is interacting on all these different things, like what is the medium they are interacting with? In this case, it's a website. It could be a chat app. It could be a mobile app. It could be anything. So this is basically like what is the user touching and using to get that action across to your organization. And then you have the backstage. And backstage is like when the action happens in the front stage, which is like whatever, your front end. How is that being fulfilled? What are the actual services and components that are being invoked to make that action happen? So for example, in the landing page, they click subscribe, and the first thing we need to do is figure out like what are all the options, like offers and discounts that's available. To do that, we have an API, and that API needs to go to 2 other different systems to get that data and collate up and bubble it up. So there are dependencies. So you could take each of these vertical actions and go down this dependency and go, like, what are all like the APIs and things, components needed for this one action? Then you can pretty much do the same thing for every other action. What happens when you click, when you enter the credit card number and hit next, or like hit purchase subscription? So you go through and you fill this out, and this is your service blueprint. Of course, it's not going to build itself because none of this is in one person's head. And to build this service blueprint, I had to talk to several teams because when I talked to my team, they were like, hey, we're the back end. We don't know this. You need to go talk to this team who owns the landing page. And so you got to go talk to them. So we just have our API. And so it involves like several conversations of going and figuring out which team to talk to, who's the most knowledgeable person on the team. So through several conversations, you can build this up. You don't have to set up like a meeting with everybody, like 60 people, to build this out. You could do it in piecemeal and build this and then share with them, hey, is this right? Is this accurate? And the other thing you can do is like once you have figured out this is how things work, then you can figure out like what are the problematic parts of the service blueprint. So you could go like as a developer or an architect, I can go, hey, these services are temporally coupled. This is a problem. We should fix that. As a project person, project manager, they can see like how many different teams are involved in making this change and how that might impact their schedule if you want to get this across. As a product manager, you can go like this is seriously this is more important than the other features that we're going to have to prioritize because this is bringing more revenue. Fixing this would bring more revenue. So different people can see the same thing and get a lot of value. And the most important thing is it helps build this shared understanding. So this is sort of like a quick, like we've done many iterations of service blueprint. Like I said, this is borrowed from the design realm. I kind of like customized it for our own. The most important thing is scope. You want to be very, very specific on what this is for. Like, is this current state or is this future state? It's a hard lesson because if you don't define that, some people could be talking current state, some people could be talking future state. And the legend is useful to determine, like, are these services owned by my team versus like a different team? So the color coding really helps out. I combine the user actions on the front stage in one swim lane, and I put the backstage the services in the middle swim lane. I created a third swim lane for alternate like actions or journeys, because sometimes the service blueprint is for the happy case, the 90% case, but certain parts of the journey you might have like a different, like a fork. And so you don't have to go through what every step of the fork is, but at least identify, hey, this is a fork, this is a different, something we need to consider. So this is like great. You've done all this work. You've found out like what you need to fix. This is where you are now trying to find solutions. And sometimes, as engineers, we can have multiple solutions. And some of us can have very strong multiple opinions. And so you need to bring them together and align on a approach, because we have to fix this. Of course, here's the traditional approach. And then the systematic way is to use a approach called a double diamond. This is also borrowed from the design world. And so this helps us like ground ourselves in first finding what the different facets of the problem are before jumping straight to the solution. So of course, I'm not going to talk too much about this. There's 2 diamonds, hence double, one for the problem, one for the solution. You first diverge, figure out all the different ways and facets of the problem. You converge so you have a clear understanding of what the problem you're trying to solve is. Sometimes it could be like, you could go down from 10 possible solutions to maybe just 3. And then you iterate on each of these solutions and go, okay, if we put all the important user needs in this solution, how does this work? So you ideate, and then you diverge again, and you figure out, like, okay, here are the trade-offs, and here, we can pick this. So what's the hard part? The hard part is facilitating. And here are some tips from Dan and Mike on some of the things that you can do to help plan. And I can tell you, we use this method and really brought a team of over 60 people like in line, aligned with a certain solution, and it came with careful planning. And so we had to understand, give people space so they can voice their dissent. So this is really powerful. And of course, lastly, you want to document your decision, and it's the journey. It's not an artifact for the sake of the artifact, but you want to really document the steps. So it can flow from like proposed, where you're still trying to figure out what the options are, and you're filling in like the pros and cons as you are like evaluating each solution. And then when you find like this is the recommended solution, you can move the status from draft to proposed, and then talk to your stakeholders to see how they're going to be impacted. And then like, this is like one place where it has all your meeting notes and fig jams and Miro boats in place. It's a lot of stuff. So these are, again, just heuristics. And if you want to take away just a few things, Wardley Mapping is really powerful for understanding the business strategy and helping even your own engineering team align with that. I'm clicking. So this is the 5-second rule of the clicker, which I've violated. And then, so service blueprints help you to understand like what the state of the system is, and you're anchoring it in terms of your user needs. And there are, of course, other different methods. And you've got double diamond as a way to figure out like, how to break your solutions apart, and of course, like documenting your journey. So if you have any questions, you can find me at the office open hours. I also will be in Denver teaching a 2-day workshop on application modernization. I also teach other workshops time to time, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I want to wish you the very best in your journey. Thank you.